If you want the latest news in technology, reviews of great new tech hardware and software, along with helpful tech tips, then Tech Brewed with Greg Doig is the podcast for you and everyone that loves tech.
This is your host for Tech Brewed, Greg Doig, and here's what we have for this episode. We'll start out with the top news headlines from this past week's tech news articles on the internet. One of them was about Google BIMI. We'll explain that in our broadcast. We'll also listen to a summary of a Microsoft Work Lab podcast that was published recently talking about artificial intelligence and creativity. And we'll finish up with some creative technology, free and open source software, GIMP. The newest update, 3.0, is expected sometime soon this year, and we'll talk about some of the expected new features. So if you're ready, let's go. Here's a quick brief of some of the tech news headlines I read this past week on the internet from Apple Insider, Windows Central, ZDNet.com, and a few other locations. Starting off with one report that read Apple's iPhone 13 is reportedly the easiest smartphone to repair at home, beating out Android flagship phones from Google and Samsung, according to a report that analyzed repair guides from the website iFixit.com. Next, Microsoft has updated the File Explorer app and Photos app on the Windows 11 operating system with new modern features, and in a bid to protect users against spoofing and phishing, Google will give blue verification checks to some verified senders in the Gmail application. Over at CNBC, there was an article that read about Google CEO Sundar Pichai receiving a $226 million payment in 2022, which was mainly due to a $218 million stock award. But this has led to discontent among Google's workforce, who were hit by layoffs earlier this year with numbers up to 12,000 employees who were let go. So I'm sure they're not too happy about that story. So coming up next on Tech Brewed, we'll talk about the new features in Gmail from Google. This is for you Gmail users out there. Google's Gmail is expanding its security with the introduction of brand indicators for message identification, which is abbreviated BIMI. This was done in 2021, and it requires senders to use strong authentication and verify their brand logo in order to display a brand logo as an avatar in emails. But now, users will see a checkmark icon for senders that have adopted BIMI, helping them identify messages from legitimate senders versus impersonators. This will benefit admins and end users by increasing confidence in email sources and creating a better email ecosystem. Google Workspace customers, legacy G Suite Basic and Business customers, and personal Google accounts will all have access to this feature. If you're a Google admin, you can learn more about setting up BIMI in the Help Center. In a recent podcast interview on Microsoft's Work Lab podcast, designer and technologist John Mehta discussed the role of AI in business, noting design tends to be stuck in a role where it is concerned with aesthetics and ethics, rather than whether a product or service works. He also believes Microsoft's responsible AI and inclusive design values are important in AI development, particularly in the areas of transparency. Mehta sees AI as a means of increasing productivity by automating tasks people dislike, freeing up time for more creative activities. He also notes that AI is not creative in itself, but it can facilitate human creativity with the ability to provide perspective and accelerate problem solving. Mehta urged companies to try using AI and understand the pros and cons of the technology. Mehta highlights the importance of transparency in AI development, as well as Microsoft's responsible AI and inclusive design values. So if you want to take a full listen, go to Microsoft.com/worklab. GIMP 3.0 is the next major release of the popular free and open source image editing software. It is currently under development, but some of the new features that are expected to be included in the release include the following: a new user interface based on the GTK Plus 3 toolkit, improved support for high DPI displays, support for the JPEG-XL file format, improved support for Adobe Photoshop project files, new tools and features for editing and manipulating images, improved performance and stability. The GIMP development team is still working on GIMP 3.0, so it's still unclear when the release will be available. However, it's expected to be released this year in 2023. Here are some of the new features in more detail. The new user interface will be based on the GTK Plus 3 toolkit, which is a more recent and more modern version of the GTK Plus toolkit that GIMP currently uses. The new user interface will be more modern and user-friendly. GIMP 3.0 will have improved support for high DPI displays, which are becoming increasingly common. This feature will make it easier to use GIMP on high DPI displays and improve the overall user experience. GIMP 3.0 will support the JPEG-XL file format, a newer and more efficient format than the JPEG file format. This will make saving images in smaller file sizes possible without sacrificing quality. GIMP 3.0 will have enhanced support for Adobe Photoshop project files. This will make it easier to import and export Photoshop files in GIMP, and it will also make it easier to collaborate with people who use Photoshop. GIMP 3.0 will include new tools and features for editing and managing images. These new features will make it possible to perform more complex tasks with GIMP and make it easier to create high-quality images. GIMP 3.0 will have improved performance and stability. This will make it possible to use GIMP for more demanding tasks and make GIMP more reliable. Overall, GIMP 3.0 is a significant update that will bring several new features and improvements to the software. If you're a GIMP user, you should be looking forward to this release. And as a note, GIMP officially released GIMP 2.99.2, which is the first development release version that will eventually become GIMP 3.0. This unstable development version is designed to give everyone the ability to try out the new GIMP and to report any bugs prior to coming out with the stable GIMP 3.0 release. So if you're familiar with GIMP, you'll be excited about the projected new updates. Or if you've never used GIMP, now may be a time to become familiar, because one of the big features that most people note is it's free and will save you money over subscription-based software. Well, this ends this week's show, but yes, we will work to bring you more and hope you enjoyed another episode of Tech Brewed, where we talk about getting your tech brewed just the way you like. I'm Greg Doig, and thank you for listening.